All right, so here's what happened. So first of all, this project actually was never supposed to be released. I ran into so many people from my old church last July, and that was crazy experience for me because there had been some contention there, but just to kind of be embraced by some of the people was such a powerful moment, and I just needed time to process that. But I also needed to deal with the concept that like two things can be true. That on the one hand, like I can love and care for and like have this deep connection and these amazing memories with so many people, and also know that I'm like not who I used to be, and doing both of those tracks. And so I took some time late July, early August of last year to just like start writing some songs based on my feelings. And I think it was like 6 songs, and I was like, okay, I did it, and I put it in a folder in Google Drive, and it was just never gonna see the light of day. And then what happened was I was just, writing, and that was what came to me as this concept of deconstruction. Like that's where I started, right? Is like what would be an anthem for people who are deconstructing. Where it landed is very different. Like if I were to show you some of the original lyrics, some of them stayed in. The one part that remained, the song is going to start where the second verse starts, which is when you're not who you used to be, interactions with the close ones are ugly. Please turn back for the unity, putting yourself away with impunity. Ain't it strange that when you change, makes folks begin to act strange. Stranger, how you become a stranger and the danger until you're left as a lone ranger. Like that was where the song started, and it went through a bunch of different iterations. But what ended up happening is I was like, oh, okay, maybe I'll come back to that, and I like put it away. And I started storyboarding for like re-releasing the Catastrophe of the Clock, but I was like, I need to tell this portion of the story. And so I was like trying to figure out what that could look like. And I was like, called The Misadventures of Pastor Wayne. So I like started thinking through what that would look like. And I was like, and I came back to this Hypocrites song. It wasn't called Hypocrites at the time. And so then I like sat back down with the beat and reworked some of the elements and we did some hypocrites, judging some hypocrites for being some hypocrites. And I was like, oh, it would be great if I had like an interlude for that, because I'll just release these 2 songs together. I won't even do the whole project. Like I was in my Instagram stories talking about like, I want to release this large project, but I shouldn't. And so I'm just going to do these 1 or 2 songs. And so I went back and was like, I'll write an interlude for Hypocrites, because of where it starts. Like it starts so hard that it's like, I don't want a single to start with that much punch. And so maybe I'll do an interlude so that way I can release them together, and it kind of segues into it. And so I was like searching for beats, and I found the one for This Is the Day, and immediately just started writing This Is the Day that the Lord has made, because I wanted to be, since I was sampling Fred Hammond's This Is the Day, I wanted the thematic for the song before it to be This Is the Day. And once I got those 2 together, I was like, yo, maybe we should put this whole thing together. So I came back to Homegoing that I had I wrote back during that time period. It was one of the songs in the original Misadventures of Pastor Wayne back last year. And then I had several requests from people to pull Be Somebody out. And so I was like, maybe I'll release it as a single, but it feels so good to be a part of something. And as I was storyboarding or mapping out like this whole re-release of the Catastrophe and the Misadventures of Pastor Wayne, I was actually going to move Be Somebody from the Catastrophe of the Clock up to the Misadventures of Pastor Wayne. So I decided to just go ahead and keep it there. And so I was like, but then I had originally moved Blackbird, which is in the Catastrophe, up with it. But then decided after I wrote a song called Home, I wrote another intro song. I was like pulling all these different concepts, and I just eventually came back to Homegoing as where it needs to start. So it was like Homegoing, which I'll talk about in depth in another video, because so Homegoing, into Be Somebody, This Is the Day, and Hypocrites. And honestly, I was just gonna end it there. Those 4 be a great little deal. I wrote Water to Wine, sitting in a parking lot waiting for a fifth grade basketball game. Like I heard the beat and I just was like, this feels good. And so I was like, okay, we'll add that. And then it was gonna end with a song called W that I eventually took off. It didn't carry the same vibe that I wanted, which is so funny because I ended up taking you off of an emotional cliff with Hurt People. And Hurt People is a song I wrote on a really, really dark day last summer. A very dark day last summer. And went and reworked it some, and then Capes and Masks, which was one of my favorite beats from The Catastrophe. But I feel like it would fit really well as the story arc of talking about taking off the mask, taking off the cape, and so did a major rewrite, because if you listen to the original, I was like channeling my inner Kendrick, trying to put as many words as I possibly could into the song. And then honestly, ending with Human Nature came about because I was celebrating my birthday, and Frontin' by Pharrell came on, and we had this group discussion about our favorite songs, and Human Nature is my favorite song of all time. And so it was just kind of like, from that discussion, it was like, we should end with that. And I was talking a ton about the album. So I wrote, because I had another version of that same song that I wrote last spring, and I just scrapped that completely. And so I wrote the entirety of it and recorded it the day before I hit publish, which is not something I would love to do, but it works. And so honestly, this entire project is like an exorcism. There are stories that I want to tell, and I felt like the reason why I kept coming back to the misadventures, which has become the deconstruction of Pastor Wayne, the reason I was coming back to the catastrophe of the clock is because I felt like I needed to like exercise those stories out. And the reality is I did that with the catastrophe of the clock last fall. Like I needed to just release that story from my soul. And the same thing with the deconstruction of Pastor Wayne. There was just some things I just needed to get out. And honestly, I felt the immediacy of like, once I finished it, it was like the floodgates of heaven opened up, and some of the things that I felt stuck on from a writing perspective finally started making sense. And so I'm super grateful. I'm super grateful for the opportunity to have written it, and I really hope that you enjoy it. And honestly, I feel like if you're a person, I say this in Hypocrites, this is the anthem for everyone in reinvention whose family wanted an intervention, drama when your name is mentioned, even though that wasn't your intention. Like, I want this to be kind of a safe space, a safe haven for those of us who've been through that reality. And so I'm just Wayne, and thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me talk about the deconstruction of Pastor Wayne.